Coach Stefanski. He's been coaching since I got here.
And Kevin Stefanski just didn't want Shedeur Sanders to be the hero of that game. He has tried everything in his power to keep Shedeur from succeeding this entire football season.
Kevin Stefanski full of shit. That's the type of coach that you talk about instilling confidence into your players.
To the point of sabotage. That was pure sabotage yet again.
Our relationship and everything has grown.
How do you think that makes Shedeur feel?
He said, I'll do anything in my power to keep you out of the spotlight here. You got us to the edge of the spotlight. You're not going to seize the spotlight from me, not on my watch.
So I'm just thankful to be here.
You got to be kidding me.
The Cleveland Browns just lived through one of the most awkward and telling moments in recent NFL memory, and almost nobody caught it in real time. Head coach Kevin Stefanski, who has been sitting at the center of the most toxic quarterback drama of the 2025 season, stepped up to the podium and delivered something that felt a lot like an apology, even though he never directly said the words.
Shedeur, as you head into this final game, his final start for you guys, I know we've asked you a couple times about what you want to see from him in his final game, but just what are your thoughts on him as you...
Yeah, obviously, just I can put in the context of this game, Mary Kay. And
in that moment, Stefanski all but admitted he mishandled Shedeur Sanders' rookie season. The timing made it even worse, landing just 24 hours before what many believe could be Sanders' final start in Cleveland and possibly Stefanski's last press conference as head coach. This is not internet gossip or locker room whispers. This is straight from the team's own media availability. The footage is out there for everyone to see. The same coach who kept Sanders away from first-team reps. The same coach who was accused of pushing shaky narratives about the rookie's preparation and meeting habits. The same coach who chose Dillon Gabriel over a first-round quarterback talent stood in front of cameras and quietly walked things back without fully owning it.
Either Kevin Stefanski thinks Shedeur Sanders is Magic City parking lot, straight ass, or he just don't like him. This is the perfect example of take all your confidence away from a player. He must got some pictures or some evidence on Jimmy Haslam. Like, I've never seen anything like this. I don't know who the backup is. Bro, listen, players in the locker room that like Shedeur off of that comment, they don't mess with Kevin Stefanski. They don't fuck, because you are really trying to lower this man's confidence. Shedeur, I don't know him. He comes off as uber confident. These type of statements makes you think, I'm not that good.
The NFL runs on pride and ego. Coaches almost never admit mistakes, especially during the season and especially when it involves a high-profile draft pick. What Stefanski did during the Week 18 preview press conference crossed that unspoken line. To understand how it reached this point, you have to look at how the Shedeur Sanders situation in Cleveland spiraled from day one. From the moment the Browns drafted him, questions followed about whether the coaching staff truly believed in him or whether the pick came down from ownership or the front office trying to shake things up. The evidence backing that theory has been stacking up ever since draft day.
I'm going to say it again and again and again. Kevin Stefanski did not want Shedeur Sanders, didn't even want him in the 5th round.
Shedeur Sanders, widely viewed as one of the most NFL-ready quarterback prospects in years, was kept away from first-team practice reps with no clear explanation. This was not a slow rollout or a patient development plan where a veteran was mentoring a rookie. This looked like deliberate isolation. Things grew even more toxic when anonymous voices inside the organization started feeding the media negative stories about Sanders. Reports popped up suggesting he was unprepared for meetings, disengaged in team rooms, and lacking the maturity and work ethic required at the professional level. Those narratives did not feel random. They felt strategic, carefully placed to shape public opinion and justify why the coaching staff refused to play him. Anyone who followed Sanders at Colorado knew these claims did not line up with reality. In college, he was a quarterback who played through serious injuries, carried an entire program on his back, and faced non-stop media pressure without cracking. He showed leadership, toughness, and professionalism every step of the way. The idea that he suddenly turned lazy the moment he arrived in Cleveland made no sense. Then the Dillon Gabriel situation pushed things even further. When injuries and poor play finally forced the Browns to make a change at quarterback, Kevin Stefanski still avoided Sanders. Instead of turning to his first-round pick, he handed opportunities to Gabriel, a quarterback with far less draft capital and a much lower ceiling. The message coming from Kevin Stefanski could not have been more cold. He seemed more willing to lose with anyone else under center than give Shedeur Sanders a real chance to prove himself. This went beyond coaching decisions and crossed into something that felt personal. It looked like a coach so determined to defend his original evaluation that he was ready to sink the season, and possibly his own future, just to avoid admitting he got it wrong. Only when the situation became impossible to ignore did things finally change. Fan frustration hit a boiling point. Media voices stopped tiptoeing around the issue and began directly challenging Stefanski's decision-making. With the pressure closing in from every angle, Sanders was finally inserted into the starting lineup. Once on the field, Sanders immediately showed why he had been viewed as a top quarterback prospect. He flashed arm strength, awareness in the pocket, leadership, and mental toughness. He made throws and extended plays in ways no other quarterback on the roster could. For the first time in years, Cleveland had a quarterback who could actually tilt games instead of just surviving them. Sanders helped lead the Browns to wins, including a statement victory over division rival Pittsburgh, a defense known for punishing young quarterbacks. That performance alone shifted the conversation around the team. What made it more impressive was the context. Sanders was thrown into action with almost no first-team preparation. He played behind an offensive line that had struggled all season and worked with a receiving group that lacked consistent playmakers. Even with those obstacles, the results were undeniable. He was not just passable or serviceable. He was legitimately good, flashing the same traits that made him so highly regarded coming out of college. He extended plays with his legs, fired passes into tight windows, and stayed composed under pressure well beyond his experience level. Most telling of all, Sanders performed while knowing the coaching staff had worked against him for months. The mental strength required to succeed in that environment is rare. Many young quarterbacks would have folded under that level of dysfunction. Behind all the internal politics and quiet resistance, Shedeur Sanders still found a way to perform, which brings everything to the press conference that stopped people in their tracks. This came just 24 hours before what many expect to be Sanders' final start of the season and possibly his last appearance in a Cleveland Browns uniform.
Outside the building isn't really in my control, it's not in my power, so I don't feel like I can go out there and tell them to do whatever. You know, that's not nothing I can control or nothing I can do. But overall, you know, I'm just happy to be here. Coach Stefanski, he's been coaching since I got here, and he's been doing a very great job, you know, with everything that's going on. On and off the field, we've definitely grown. Our relationship and everything has grown, so I'm just thankful to be here.
Kevin Stefanski stepped up for his routine Week 18 media session. But what followed was anything but routine. What unfolded is already being dissected across NFL circles, either as a rare moment of honesty from a head coach or a last-minute attempt at saving face before consequences hit. When asked directly about Sanders and his development, Stefanski avoided the usual empty phrases about patience and process. Instead, he offered something that sounded like a quiet walkback of months of decisions.
Tell you, I'm looking forward to him continuing to build on all the good things that we're doing, and there's areas of improvement that he's working very hard on, we're working very hard on, but continue to put your team in position to win football games.
He spoke about seeing progress from Sanders and wanting that progress to continue. He referenced the work being done in practices and meetings. He emphasized how rewarding it is when players respond to coaching and instruction. Then came the part that shifted everything. Stefanski pointed out Sanders' eagerness to improve and highlighted visible growth in every one of his starts. Those comments carried more weight than they seemed on the surface. If Sanders is eager to improve, that undercuts the narrative that painted him as disengaged or unprepared. If he is taking coaching and improving with each start, that raises serious questions about why he was not given earlier opportunities. And if the staff has been working closely with him in meetings and practices, that directly clashes with the stories that were leaked about his behavior behind closed doors. Without saying it outright, Stefanski signaled that Sanders was never the issue. Kevin Stefanski did not stop there. He went out of his way to praise Shedeur Sanders for beating Pittsburgh and framed it as an important moment for a young quarterback to earn a win against a division rival. He acknowledged how brutal games in the AFC North can be and made it clear he was impressed with how Sanders handled that challenge. This is the same coach who, just weeks earlier, was giving Dillon Gabriel chances ahead of Sanders. This is the same coach who blocked Sanders from first-team reps and presided over an organization that allowed damaging stories about the rookie's work ethic and preparation to leak out. Now the tone has completely changed. Now there is pride. Now there is recognition of Sanders' talent and competitive edge. The timing of that shift says everything. What stood out even more was how Stefanski addressed Sanders' mistakes. He noted that one interception came down to bad luck and suggested another was a learning moment. That is a head coach providing context and backing his quarterback instead of using errors as justification to pull him. That kind of support was nowhere to be found earlier in the season. There was no patience when Sanders was on the outside looking in. There was no grace while narratives about his readiness spread unchecked. The reason feels obvious. Stefanski did not want Sanders to succeed. He wanted validation for his original evaluation, whether that meant believing Sanders was not ready or that he did not fit the system. The most revealing part of the press conference, though, was not what Stefanski said, but what he chose to leave unsaid. Kevin Stefanski left the most important questions unanswered. He never explained why Shedeur Sanders was kept away from first-team reps. He avoided addressing the negative stories about Sanders' preparation that surfaced earlier in the season. He offered no real justification for giving Dillon Gabriel opportunities ahead of a more talented quarterback. There was also no clear development plan presented that could explain how Sanders was handled as a rookie. That silence carried more weight than anything he said. Stefanski knows this situation spiraled out of control. He understands that the football world sees the mistakes clearly. He also knows his job security has taken a serious hit, in large part because of how badly the Sanders situation was managed. This press conference felt less like routine media availability and more like an attempt to reshape his legacy before the consequences arrive. The timing only adds another layer. Around the league, reports have surfaced suggesting Stefanski is coaching for his job and that ownership has grown tired of the team's stagnant results, despite heavy investment in talent. Expectations were high entering the season, with playoff talk and championship aspirations filling the air. Instead, Cleveland is closing the year as one of the league's biggest disappointments. Another season of the competitive window has slipped away. Analysts and insiders have consistently pointed to the mishandling of the quarterback position as a central reason the Browns failed to meet expectations. Stefanski's refusal to commit to Sanders, even while other options struggled, cost the team multiple games that were well within reach and likely erased any real playoff chance. That decision now looms over everything. The focus now shifts to what comes next for both men. League sources indicate that Stefanski is expected to be dismissed shortly after the season ends.
Personnel decisions, particularly with people at the top of an organization, are always difficult. And I can tell you, having made a lot of these over the years, that this was as difficult as any we've ever had to make.
The Browns are believed to be searching for a head coach capable of developing young quarterbacks and making sound, forward-thinking personnel decisions. For Shedeur Sanders, the outcome is far more complicated and carries real weight for his future. He showed clear NFL-level ability once he finally got on the field, but he did it within a broken environment led by a coaching staff that worked against him instead of supporting him. That reality now hangs over every decision Cleveland has to make. The big question is whether the next regime sees Sanders as someone to build around or as a reminder of a failed season they want to move past. There is also the league-wide perception to consider. Some teams in need of a quarterback may wonder if Sanders is tied too closely to this collapse, while others may see a player who succeeded despite chaos and view him as a valuable, overlooked asset. Beyond Cleveland, this situation exposes a deeper problem across the NFL. Too often, quarterback development is mishandled by organizations more concerned with protecting jobs and egos than committing to a long-term plan. When scouting departments, coaching staffs, and front offices are not aligned, talented players can end up sidelined by systems that never wanted them in the first place. If the league wants to stop wasting promising careers, these structural failures have to be addressed. Sanders' response to this ordeal should only strengthen his standing around the NFL. He handled an impossible situation with composure and professionalism. He never publicly criticized his coaches or shifted blame, even when frustration would have been understandable. He stayed prepared, kept working behind the scenes, and delivered once he was finally given a chance. Those traits matter. Mental toughness, maturity, and resilience are non-negotiable at the quarterback position. What Sanders showed during this turbulent rookie season supports the idea that he belongs at the highest level. The difference between how Sanders carried himself and how Kevin Stefanski handled the situation stands out clearly. The contrast could not be clearer. A rookie quarterback stayed calm and professional while being steadily undermined. A veteran head coach leaned into internal politics, allowed damaging narratives to circulate through media channels, and made personnel decisions that actively hurt his own team. When reality finally caught up and the pressure became impossible to escape, Kevin Stefanski attempted to clean it up with a carefully worded non-apology disguised as routine quarterback evaluation. The move came across as weak and evasive. It reflected someone who knew he was wrong but lacked the accountability to say it directly. That press conference will be remembered as one of the most uncomfortable and revealing moments of the 2025 NFL season. It peeled back the curtain on the unhealthy dynamics inside the Cleveland Browns organization. It confirmed what many had already suspected about Stefanski's role in undermining Shedeur Sanders. It showed what happens when ego, control, and politics override sound football decision-making. Most of all, it validated Sanders and everyone who believed he deserved a fair chance from the start. The rookie was never the issue. The real problem was a coaching staff that refused to put him in position to succeed. As Sanders approaches what could be his final game in a Browns uniform, he can take pride in knowing he proved himself under circumstances that would have crushed many players. He showed legitimate NFL ability, helped his team win games, and handled constant adversity with maturity well beyond his experience. What comes next remains uncertain. Whether Sanders stays in Cleveland under a new staff or moves to another organization that values his skill set, he has already demonstrated that he belongs in this league. The same cannot be said for Kevin Stefanski. His time in Cleveland will always be defined by how badly he mishandled one of the most promising young quarterbacks in football. The NFL is a results-driven business. Excuses carry no weight, and performance is everything. Stefanski failed on both counts. He delivered disappointing results with a roster built to compete, then attempted to deflect responsibility onto a rookie quarterback who ultimately proved him wrong, once given even a limited opportunity. This press conference felt like Kevin Stefanski's final attempt to steer the narrative before the inevitable outcome arrives. The problem is that the truth is already visible. Stefanski undermined Shedeur Sanders throughout the 2025 season, and no amount of late-stage praise or carefully worded walkbacks can erase what happened. Coaching at this level requires accountability, honesty, and the ability to admit mistakes. Stefanski showed none of those traits in how he handled Sanders. His decisions were driven by pride rather than football logic. He allowed internal politics to outweigh his responsibility to play and develop the best quarterback on the roster. Even worse, he participated in an environment where negative narratives about a rookie were allowed to spread unchecked. When reality finally became impossible to deny, his response was indirect praise and coded language instead of a clear explanation or apology. That is a failure of leadership at its core. For Browns fans, this is another painful chapter in a long history of quarterback instability and organizational dysfunction. They watched the team draft a talented young quarterback only to see him sidelined and mishandled. They endured another season that collapsed despite a roster capable of competing at a high level. Now they are staring at yet another coaching search and another reset because the same mistakes keep repeating. That frustration is justified. The lone positive outcome from this situation is that Sanders' ability and character still came through. Despite everything stacked against him, he proved he can play at this level. He showed the mental toughness to operate inside a broken system and the physical tools to succeed on the field. He put together real tape that matters. When he finally got meaningful snaps, he made plays and helped his team win games. That is what the league values most. As for Stefanski, his chapter in Cleveland appears to be closing. The press conference meant to preview the final game of the season ended up feeling like an unintended farewell. The praise he gave Sanders doubled as an admission that he had been wrong. His pride in the rookie's development quietly acknowledged that those chances should have come months earlier. The entire appearance came across as an effort to preserve some dignity before exiting. It was too late and too transparent to change perceptions. This situation will be studied across coaching staffs and front offices as a warning about what happens when ego and personal agendas override sound football judgment. The Browns had a young quarterback who could have been growing from day one. Instead, months were lost, keeping him on the bench, allowing damaging narratives to circulate, and prioritizing less capable options because admitting a mistake felt harder than making one. The leadership breakdown here is impossible to ignore. What comes next for Cleveland will shape how this organization is viewed for years. Where Shedeur Sanders ends up next season, and whether he finally gets a clean slate with competent leadership, will be one of the most closely watched storylines moving forward. This conversation is far from over, and the ripple effects will be felt well beyond Cleveland as the league reflects on how easily talent can be wasted when decision-makers lose sight of what actually matters. This entire Kevin Stefanski saga serves as a clear snapshot of what goes wrong inside certain NFL organizations. Talented players end up stalled by poor coaching decisions. Ego and internal politics start to matter more than winning. Anonymous leaks and narrative shaping replace honest communication and fair evaluation. When the truth finally becomes impossible to avoid, the response is not accountability, but shallow damage control. This pattern repeats across the league far too often, and it explains why so many promising careers are derailed before they ever have a real chance to take off. Shedeur Sanders deserved far better than what he experienced in Cleveland this season. He deserved a coaching staff that believed in him, developed him with intention, and gave him a legitimate opportunity to succeed. He deserved an organization that valued talent over politics and winning over personal pride. Whether that environment comes in Cleveland under new leadership or with another franchise remains uncertain. What is certain is this: Sanders proved he belongs in the NFL. Kevin Stefanski, meanwhile, showed he should never again be entrusted with the development of a talented young quarterback. That is the lasting takeaway from a press conference that exposed uncomfortable truths and became one of the defining moments of the 2025 NFL season. When everything is stripped away, this saga was never just about one press conference or one coach trying to rewrite history. It was about power, ego, and an organization that once again failed a young quarterback when it mattered most. Shedeur Sanders did everything that was asked of him and more. He stayed quiet, stayed ready, and delivered when the door finally cracked open. That matters in this league. Teams notice resilience. Front offices study tape, not excuses. Sanders put enough on film to make it clear that he belongs, regardless of how this chapter in Cleveland ends. His future will be decided by people who understand that development requires belief, patience, and alignment, not politics and narrative games. As for the Browns, this situation will linger long after the season ends. Coaching changes, roster decisions, and long-term direction will all be judged through the lens of how badly this was handled. This was not just a missed opportunity, it was a warning sign. Stories like this are why conversations around the league matter more than ever. If you want deeper breakdowns, real context, and unfiltered football conversations that go beyond surface headlines, Huddle Files is where that continues. This story is over, but the fallout is just beginning, and the league will be watching every move that comes next. And you already know, we'll have every second of it broken down, every twist, every leak, every hidden play behind the headlines. So like, subscribe, drop a comment, and share it out. Stay locked in with Huddle Files, where the real NFL stories live.